I am here early, and I don't know how to do this. This is my first stream, so forgive me for my forgive me for my sins. Or don't. I don't care. I'm just gonna send out a message to everybody on my social media, and then we'll get started. We got about 3 minutes. Is the mic level good? You like that sound? Does that... Seems like it's coming through. This is what happens when you don't know what you're doing. I see the little... Okay. I'll also get better audio equipment one day if I keep doing this. I don't know if I am. All right. Super professional. I'm trying to find a link because I want to share it. Why can I... Is it this? Oh, no. That's not it. Delete message. Delete. Super professional. Got 2 minutes before I'm supposed to start. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I'm really confused. Wish I could show y'all. Oh, I got what was going on. All right. Oh, it's 7:30 now. It should have started. If that is the case, welcome. I don't think anybody showed up, but that's okay. I'm here to talk about The Legend of Redneck, a webtoon I've been working on, publishing on Webtoon Canvas. And that's about it. I can talk a little bit about my day while I wait for people to trickle on into the chat. But until then, so I'm on vacation. I'm taking a break from doing comics for a little bit. I'm taking a little break from thinking about career stuff, being, I don't know, thinking about all that annoying money stuff, all the stuff that's like actually really exhausting, right? Just for 2 weeks. Not because I'm having any issues with writing Legend of Redneck. I'm actually having more ideas than I could possibly want for that story. And quite honestly, like it's a really fun story to write. I'm really enjoying it. And it's giving me a lot of it's a different vibe. I think that's the best way that I could put it. It's a different vibe from Trailer Park Warlock, and yet also has a lot of similarities. And I think for me, the main goal with The Legend of Redneck is that I really wanted to make a story that was a little narratively tighter in terms of how the characters interact with each other. Something I really enjoyed about Trailer Park Warlock was that it was extremely expansive. There's so many things going on. Um, it was one of those, I don't know, the way I've been thinking about how I wrote that story is it was almost like a platformer, like a Mario type platformer where every level is like new stuff gets introduced and it keeps getting more and more convoluted and complicated and weird and wild and crazy. And Legend of Redneck's a little more dialed in. And there's still certainly expansion, but all the expansion that I want to do has a lot to do with the characters directly and not so much the world building, which was what I mean. Trailer Park Warlock really um, like it became entirely about world building, right? Which was fun. I loved it. It was great, but um, I kind of want to take a break from world building. I also think that I don't know. There's just like I felt like what something that might have been missing was sort of the way was the depth of the characters, and I feel like I'm getting more of that in the Legend of Redneck. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm incorrect. Um, but we'll see. Hopefully, y'all are enjoying it, and I'm gonna get to some of these questions in just a moment. So right now, today, I am at an Airbnb in some undisclosed location in Jackson, Louisiana, and just I'm just gonna be chilling for the next couple of days. There's actually some really pretty areas out here, which is kind of surprising to me. A lot of people, I don't know. I've felt this way for a long time. A lot of my friends have felt this way for a long time. There's been sort of this idea or consensus that Louisiana isn't a pretty state. And I'm realizing that's because we lived on the Gulf Coast, um, which is funny. Like a lot of the Gulf Coast in the South is actually really pretty. Like if you go to Pensacola in Florida or Gulf Shores in Alabama, it's gorgeous. But Louisiana, Louisiana is kind of unfortunate in that, um, especially where I grew up in Lake Charles, there's this beach called Holly Beach, and the water's always muddy there. It's never clear. It's never pretty. It's just it's unfortunate. But there are people who like Holly Beach, and God bless them. Somebody's gotta like that beach because I don't. Anyway, getting on. Hey, insult comic dog, how you doing? I'm going to find all these questions, which I could have wrote down, but instead I'm just gonna look for it on the app. I kind of figured because I saw you comment. I saw you comment in the Discord, and then pretty immediately got a subscription on YouTube. So I was like, I bet that that's Immortal Knight. I have a suspicion. All right, let me find the questions. There were two. I know that there were two main questions. Taco. Let's see. Legend of Redneck started with Lank and became largely about Judy, Hizzard, and Loretta. As the story continued, the importance of their perspectives visibly grew. How organic was that process? That's a really good question, Taco. Here's how organic it was. Judy, I didn't even think was going to be a main character. Like, like initially, like the whole thing with Judy being the front desk, um, like the front desk person was just for me. It was just a joke, kind of playing on like this idea of like, oh, Judy's kind of this weird pig demon person, monster, what have you. And she has the front line with Ganderdolf. And at that time, I was still thinking about the story almost exclusively about Lank. And yeah, I like Judy's high heel hooves too. Triumph. Yeah, well, because I was staring, and I'll get back to your question, Taga. I just wanted to comment on it. Because I was looking at pictures of pigs, and like pigs' feet are the pigs have these funny little like high heel feet, these little like tripod feet. Um, but yeah, back to your question, Taco. So yeah, Judy was super organic. I kind of like I just started building the character bit by bit because clearly like she had to interact with Lank. And there's that episode where she introduces Lank to that first dungeon, and you get sort of that first glimpse of her character, right? Which is like she's kind of um feeling sad that like, oh well, Lank's really nice, but probably not going to see him again. He's probably going to die, right? And of course, that gets repeated by another character who some readers thought was also Judy. There's the store clerk who's also like a pig monster. I have a name for that species, race, whatever you want to call them. I just call them Hellions. Um, I don't I don't have more of a history behind them other than that's what I call them. Although I'm starting to build a history and it's not fully fleshed out, but that's my name for them. They're called Hellions. And so like they're clearly inspired by um there's like some monsters in particularly in Zelda Breath of the Wild that you fight in. Part of what got me thinking about those critters is that I can't remember what they're called. They're like mogoblins or something. But anyway, they have throughout Breath of the Wild, they have these little encampments that you can go ransack and get treasure and stuff. Anyway, when you kill them, their death screech is horrifying. Like I hated killing them because the sound that they make made me feel like I'm a terrible person. And so that actually like kind of built into my slowly growing sympathy into these characters. And I was like, well, I think I want to make this character very sympathetic because this is sort of my this is me redeeming my video game karma. It's so ridiculous, but it is part of the inspiration behind Judy's character. Okay, I'm going to go back to the comments real quick. Not a question, but I just wanted to mention I really like your last name, Rainwater. It's really cool. Well, thank you. I didn't do anything to get it other than be born, which is still, I mean, that's a lot, right? For anybody. Taco. I adore Judy's roughly hair and eyes. The recent comic where she's surprised at what she sees his or do on the monitor. Her expression was perfect. Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I like writing Judy a lot too. Is she's very expressive. It was the same reason why I liked drawing Jake. Like Jake Baker's such an expressive character, and I think what makes his particular expressions fun is a lot of times he's kind of like the same tempo, and then something happens and like you get like a really wild expression out of him, whereas Judy's like everything. She's the Tao, she's like water. She just has a reaction to every little thing that's very peculiar, and also kind of based on her own like emotional, not volatility, but like emotional just reactivity, I guess. um let's see. Triumph. Actually, I just thought of a question. Would it be possible at all to see any cameos from Trailer Park Warlock? I'm trying to keep it very limited. I am having I have been putting a lot of Easter eggs in Legend of Redneck, but I'm very intently trying to keep it separated as much as possible. And for totally legal reasons, I'm trying to make sure like those two universes look like different universes. Now, if in your head canon you see stuff that makes you feel like you could put those things together, great. Um, I am definitely writing Legend of Redneck in a way where you could feasibly create a head canon if you wanted to that connected the two. There's some very obvious things that happen in Legend of Redneck that happen in the background where you could feasibly say, okay, later on in the timeline, something happens, right? And I'll keep it at that. Only reason I ask is I've seen Setsuko Easter eggs. Oh yeah, no, definitely. I am enjoying those Easter eggs too. Like those Easter eggs. Well, I mean, first of all, the character of Set in Trailer Park Warlock was just like after in the second half of that story was the lifeblood of sort of what kept me writing the jokes and gags because Set was just such a like he's just so fun. Like I can't think of another character who's just so fun to write and so like um I don't know. It's just like I do miss writing that character, and that's why he ends up having so many Easter eggs in the Legend of Redneck. And also sort of works into a finer point, I think, that goes thematically with the Legend of Redneck. Um, I feel like was there a question that there was the questions there's literally the questions on Webtoon that I didn't I totally forgot about. Let's see if we can get to them. But I'm enjoying the questions y'all are asking too. So if y'all have any others, please chime in. We'll get to all of them eventually, right? This is a hang. We're just hanging out. All right. So on Webtoon, this was asked by Lucky Cheshire. I'm curious, ballpark, how many employees does Ganderdorf employ? Also, are we heading towards a Marxist revolution? Because it kind of feels like we're heading towards a Marxist revolution. All right, so first question, how many employees does Ganderdorf employ? I mean, it's got to be, in my mind, it's it's at least 500. It's a very large amount, and it's also one of those things where he's constantly employing new foes, right? Like people to fight heroes, right? Because they die. I mean, the workers' compensation in Ganderdorf's castle has to be insane, or it's just like, you know, Gandalf is that terrible of a boss, which I mean, odds are he's that terrible of a boss. It's that terrible of a job, et cetera, et cetera. The second part, also, are we heading towards a Marxist revolution? A revolution of some sort. I would not say it's a Marxist one. A a workers' revolution probably, but not with any particular ideological framework. That's not how my brain works, but there's definitely going to be personal revolutions happening in the scope of the Legend of Redneck, which is always kind of where my particular intellectual interests are. Um, I'm very interested in seeing how Hizzard is going to change as a character. He is a character. He's another character I did not really have a lot of expectation about. And then there was something that happened once Lank enters the wilderness dungeon, and that was when I was like, okay, I'm gonna like give some thought and effort to Hizzard as a character and just like scope him out, basically, right? Um, and it was in that period of time where I was like, oh, okay, I really like Hizzard as a character, and I think there's a lot to build here, which is built into the most recent episode where we see Lank and Hizzard have now, you know, they've formed an alliance. And that to me is going to be the really interesting stuff that happens later on in the story. Um and I want to build on that. Like I really want to build on their alliance and what that means and what that's going to turn into. And I'm also wanting to build on Hizard's relationship to other employees in Ganondorf's castle, and also Hizard's relationship to specific characters like potentially Judy or Loretta. Like I've had one interact I've there's one or two interactions that he has with Judy and Loretta, and I want to get them to kind of coalesce a little bit more, but I haven't quite figured that out yet. That's another reason why I'm taking this break right now, because um there's a lot of string I want to like put together. There's a lot of, or that's not the right analogy, but there's a lot of little jigsaw pieces I want to put together first in my head before I get into the second act. Um, I'll have a little bit more to say of that in a second, but I just wanted to look at what people had to say in the chat. Let's see. Taco Set really is so fun. He's chaos embodied both literally and philosophically. Um, oh, oh, I wonder what the turnover rate for Ganondorf's castle is. Like I said, I mean, just imagine the worst turnover rate possible, I guess. I mean, like, um, like there are jobs where they're like, no accidents. And it's, there's a little clock, right, of how long there's been since there's been an accident. And they probably just don't have a clock because it's why even bother, right? But maybe I could play with that actually. Triumph the insult comic die. You mentioned legal reasons. Can you elaborate? Although I understand if you cannot, bit of a shame. Otherwise, well, the main reason is that I'm under contractual obligations with Webtoon and Trailer Park Warlock that are not so much that they own it, but they do own a piece of it. And so anything else that I make related to Trailer Park Warlock, they also can claim a piece of it. And so for me, I am interested in putting some boundaries with that, like in terms of how I write stories. Now, there are situations where I might change my mind completely later on. Even I could theoretically change my mind while making The Legend of Redneck, but right now I feel like I would like to put some distance between myself and Webtoon because for me, they haven't shown that much interest in my work. And so I've kind of taken the hint that like, okay, I'm not like what I'm making is not their like wheelhouse right now. And that could change. I don't know. But like right now it's not their wheelhouse. What their wheelhouse is like I'm the emperor's daughter or I'm the emperor's new boyfriend or I'm the new emperor's whatever. Like that's their thing. That's their bread and butter. I'm not gonna like complain about it, but it's the realities, right? But Webtoon Canvas is a really great publishing platform, and I'm probably going to look into other publishing platforms in addition in the future. But like right now, I mean, the reality is like Webtoon Canvas, like was probably the most direct shot for me to be able to allow my audience from Trailer Park Warlock to come over to Legend of Redneck, and that's pretty useful. Like I'm not going to slam them for something useful. I have a lot of things to slam them about, but I'm not going to slam them for that. Um, the sort which I believe has driven authors off the platform from my. Yeah, I mean, I do. You're correct that it has driven authors off the platform, but like I said, like I am. Look, I wrote the character set because I do have some of those personality traits. I'm a little devious. I'm a little bit like, okay, here's how I can, put things together. And I'm lazy. Like that's the other reality is I'm super lazy. I don't want to make my own site right now. I do at some point. It is something that I'm thinking about, but like I'm super lazy when it comes to stuff like that. And for me, I'm like, I just want to tell a story and see where it goes. And I'll just deal with that right now and kind of allow it to build from there. There's definitely definitely a great deal of personality that Hizzard has. Plus, it points out the whole implications of Gandalf running advertising that openly demonizes heroism. It feels like great similarity to how Marvel heroes ultimately reinforce a status quo that doesn't actually fix the core issues that exist. That's good. But yeah, I think I the other reason, and I don't know how much I'm gonna do with that little like world building plot line in the Legend of Redneck. I am gonna build on it, but I don't know if I'm gonna like. I'm not trying to make a point with it right now necessarily. I'm just so knee deep into Taoism right now that I'm having a lot of fun playing with ideas where it's like, well, why don't we just reverse how I did that in Trailer Park Warlock too, but it's one of my favorite things to do is like just reverse how you look at things and and then reverse the reversal, right? And then just keep doing that until something that looks like a unique or useful perspective comes out of that. Or maybe not at all. Sometimes it just leads to humor. It leads to good humor. And then other times, particularly with right now, I think there are times where it's felt very humorous, and then there are times when it's just been kind of a way to create a bit of sinister nature to where that world is right now. Because I'd have to say, I don't know, like y'all might feel differently, but I feel like Legend of Redneck is actually a little bit darker in tone from Trailer Park Warlock. Like there are dark moments in Trailer Park Warlock, but there's always kind of a through line of like levity. And Legend of Redneck does have levity to it, but I do feel like this is a darker story overall. And I don't have an issue with that because it goes in line with sort of the sword and sorcery nature of its inspirational points, right? So like those inspirational points aren't just like the Legend of Zelda, but like also like more I don't know what you would call like heavy metal, side of the van painting D&D type stuff, right? Like it's a little more influenced by more traditional Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons and Dragons type imagery, right? Which is also like Legend of Zelda takes from that, and Lord of the Rings, stuff like that, right? Um, I'm actually like I try to deny this in my life, but the reality is I'm actually a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Like, um, when I read it as a child, like I didn't realize like how much of a through line of influence it's had on my life. And before I started writing The Legend of Redneck, I actually like watched all of the Peter Jackson movies front to back all in one day. I was crying. Like I was just like like ugly crying throughout the entire saga. Um because it's that story is like I don't really remember the books that well, but the way that they're portrayed through the movies, and I know a lot of people have complaints about the movies, but like and for valid reasons, but I really enjoy them. But like they're high emotions, like extremely high what is the word I'm looking for? Like kind of valorized emotions, like almost ideal emotions about kinship and friendship and like, doing things for your fellow human being, right? It's one of those things that I'm missing a little bit. So anyway, let's get back to what the chat was saying. So I looked at episode 49 and Judy's face when she says, I still want to bake something reminds me of Mrs. Puff saying, Oh, Neptune from SpongeBob. um, yeah, there's a Wizard and Unicorn van. I just looking over the comments real quick. Hi there, Philip. Hope you're doing good. Oh, hey, Jess. It's true, Jess. I am a Lord of the Rings nerd. I am not as intense of a Lord of the Rings nerd though as the people who are like reread it every year. Like I need to reread it because it's been about 20 years now. Um so like for me, I really only feel like I'm a movie nerd right now. Like I need to give that book series one more shake just to like cuz there were a lot of things that I think I missed when I read it as a kid. For instance, like I totally forgot about all the the Ring of Power has more magic than just makes Frodo invisible. And I totally missed that for some reason. Like somebody had brought it up to me. I was like, "Really? I don't remember that at all." There's a lot of little I mean, everybody misses all the little details in Lord of the Rings because that's most of the books, right? And I think that's why I'm kind of apprehensive of reading it again because as much as I enjoy world building, I don't know if I can get into it as deep as Tolkien got into it because Tolkien like lived in that world, right? And I I like to live in the worlds that I write, but I also like to take vacations from them. And I feel like Tolkien um he might have just whole hog lived in Middle Earth. Speaking of which, I found a set of Dungeon and Dragon rings at GameStop recently. Nice. My husband is currently playing the RPG with his friends. I'm assuming you're talking about Lord of the Rings RPG? I just wanted to verify or clarify what y'all are talking about. Um, let's see. There was another question on here. Okay, cool. Here we go. This is from Rick EJ. Questions for the Q&A. How much of Trailer Park Warlock did you have planned out in advance, and how much of it did you improvise along the way? At what point did you know you'd end the series? Okay, so good question actually, because I'm thinking about it a lot. Excuse me. Because my initial answer I want to say is I improvised all of it, but I really didn't. I did improvise a lot, and actually that came up in a recent roundtable discussion that I had that also included Jess, who's in the chat tonight. If any of y'all haven't seen that, it was actually really fun. Go check out Pantheon Talks. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember what the name of the roundtable discussion was, but I discussed with them a lot about that method because my method is a little bit maddening. I've said this a lot, which is that I don't really. I kind of feel like either the editors at Webtoon that I was working with were just told like don't give that much feedback, or I don't know, like I just kind of assumed that the editors were just like, oh, I don't, Jesus take the will. Like, I hope it works out, because I didn't have the long plan figured out. Um, I was going at it by the seat of my pants for sure. And that's typically how I like to write. I've talked about this before, and I guess I'll always talk about this because it's how I write right now. I do look at it a bit like gardening. Like you set up what is the realm of possibilities by dictating what the soil is going to be like, how big is it going to be, what kind of vegetation, what kind of plants you're going to grow in this garden, and then you lit uh well, I should say it's more like a permaculture garden, less so like a more um rigorous garden, I guess you could say. Um, because you're going to have a lot of volunteers in those kind of permaculture gardens, and you're going to have a lot of unexpected, things arise, and weeds aren't as of an annoyance or a negative thing. I definitely look at it as we'll just go with it and see where how it turns out. And that's not editors don't like it. And I understand why they don't like it because it gives them very little quality control, and that can be a very good thing for them to have quality control. That is part of the point of why editors have existed historically. Webtoon editors, I'm not sure if they exist for that reason. Sometimes they exist simply to make sure that you don't have any typos, which they all do a great job of that, and then they do a great job of making sure things are up to standard and code for like Webtoons content policies, right? Which there was only ever one time ever that I was asked to amend something in Trailer Park Warlock, and the only time that was in the episode where Jake does that wombo combo drug, and we see his spirit body fly off. And there's a one panel, and it was the panel where I was trying to throw a bone to my readers and let them see Jake's spirit butt, and um, the editor was like, "That's too much butt." So he asked that I erase the crack of his butt. So y'all were denied Jake's butt. uh, um, you only have Webtoon to blame for that. I tried. I gave it my honest try. Um, so other than that, I would say that Webtoon's been pretty um pretty easy to work with actually. I would have to say Webtoon was a lot easier to work with than working with print industry people because they're weird about like content control. They're super weird about it. And I mean, granted the thing that I had worked on was a licensed product, right? It was Plants vs Zombies, so like it was all content controlled, like not just Dark Horse but PopCat, because they had a specific this plant needs to look like this. We cannot go off of any kind of creative artistic liberty here, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so I guess my only comment on that would be don't work on licensed properties if you want to maintain your sanity. I mean, that's just my suggestion. Or do it if that's something you really like. Um, I'm just checking in on the comments real quick. And yet, other webtoons seem to be able to get away with straight up nudity. I am not aware of this. I don't necessarily read that many webtoons. I've heard tales of Let's Play that it's pretty risque. Uh, hmm. I mean, it's one of those things where I I think right now I've talked about this before too. Like, I do need to check in on some webtoons, but part of the reason why I haven't read that many is because after Trailer Park Warlock, I was just burnt out on anything comics or webtoon related. I'm starting to get I'm starting to get it back. Part of the reason why I'm writing Legend of the I keep wanting to call it Legend of the Redneck because my friend called it that. It's stuck in my head on loop because I'm like, that's not what it's called. um, damn it, what was I saying? The Legend of Redneck. Part of the reason why I'm writing it is that, or the way I'm writing it is because it is a format that I can write it in that is not as intense as the 50 panels a week method that was Trailer Park Warlock. That actually was so difficult that I ended up I've had to work through body pain from that process that I have resolved for the most part at this point. I've mostly resolved it. especially the shoulder pain is like completely gone. I had terrible shoulder pain towards the end of that story. I was like getting massages every week. Um, it was kind of brutal. Um, that's pretty much gone at this point and has really given me a lot of like repose to think about, okay, well, how do I go forward in terms of like being a comic book author, you know? There's a limit I have to set for myself. Um, Also, like, I'm getting a little bit older, you know? These are just things that happen as you get older. You get more back pain, you get more stuff happening. And I am working through resolving a lot of that through means both medically sound and spooky. So, uh, as is my as is my typical process. But go okay, there was another part of this question that I wanted to look at. At what point did you know how you'd end the series? So, look, I would probably be still working on Trailer Park Warlock now had Webtoon not told me like we need you to wrap it up at some point. Um, this happened around season 3 and my editor this is another thing I've talked about a lot, but I guess I'll talk about it again. Um, so because of the way that like Webtoons stuff works, if you're a Webtoon original artist, you have no access to your analytics. Zero. You have zero access to your analytics, which is ridiculous because if you're a Canvas creator, you have plenty of access, right? It's not like amazing access, but I mean it's useful access. Like you have an idea of how many people are showing up, reading it, a week, a month. You have an idea of like what the numerics are, right? So in season 2 of Trailer Park Warlock, I took some pretty big creative risks. And yeah, it's super unhelpful talk. It's so ridiculous, and I'll get more into that as I'm talking about this. In season 2, I took some pretty big creative risks, and there were very clear like things that I was getting very clear signals from some readers that they were not enjoying the direction that Trailer Park Warlock was going because it was getting more serious, it was getting more lore heavy, it was getting more in depth. Basically, I was doing a lot of stuff that I wanted to do and I enjoyed doing, and it was very ambitious, but also it was extremely risky as a story because it was, breaking outside of people's comfort zones of how season 1 went. Well, I asked my editor, like, hey, how's it doing? He's like, oh, it's fine. And then, somewhere around the end of season 2, he's like, well, a lot of your readership has dropped off. And I'm just like, well, how much? And he's like, well, it's about half. And it's not good. Here's the thing. I don't think I would have done season 2 any differently necessarily. I don't know. I kind of go around this circle a lot because I'm like, I really like season 2. I feel like a season 2 of Trailer Park Warlock is one of my favorite things I've ever written, but also it may have destroyed my long-term career with Webtoon, which I don't know. At this point, I don't care. Like it is what it is. Um, so I guess the way that I think about it still is like, had I had that knowledge, would I have ended up with a worse story? Because then I would have to like, oh, I have to reorient everything to appease the readership. I mean, by the time that I had gotten that signal, it was already too late, right? And it was what influenced me to write the later seasons, or particularly season 3, with a more is a little more goofy in tone. And by that point, uh, midway through season 3, like the editor that I was working with was just like, well, we at some point we have to wrap it up. Um, so just give us a number. How many episodes do you think it will take you to write it? And in the back of my head, I'm like, I don't know, 1 million. But they're not going to say okay to 1 million. So I ended up being in this kind of poker situation where I have to like, guess what is an appropriate number. Um, Initially I was like maybe 120, and I was like, that's probably too much, because it's like that would be a couple years, and they really are kind of pushing for me to wrap it up at some point, which it ended up being about 2 or 3 years after that point, where I was writing season 3, 4, and 5. So the number I gave them was about 62, and that ended up working out perfectly. Because I really like how the rest of Trailer Park Warlock ended. I'm happy that it's over, because I think here's the other thing. I think if I had kept going, we would have gotten into like Dragon Ball Z style power creep, and like I just think it wouldn't have worked out very well. I'm pretty happy that the story is wrapped up, and that I can just say like, this is a complete story. I'm proud of it. I'm happy with it. I can always come back to it later in some other form. Like, there are there's tons of characters I can think of where we could like look into their lives. There's a bunch of different perspectives that are available in that world, which is what I liked so much about it. It's extremely open in its possibilities, right? Um, so yeah, like I still think about, okay, what could I do with that world? Um, but the odds of me going back to it right now might require me putting up a certain amount of money in just like splitting ways with Webtoon. It's a possibility. I'm just saying it's a possibility. I don't know if I am going to do that. I don't like right now, the next 2 weeks, I don't know what anything is. Like, I'm just going to allow things to be what they are right now, and just kind of like focus on Legend of Redneck. And there's also like a project that's or I should say is inspired by Legend of Redneck, that I'm also working on in the background right now, that I don't want to go too deep into, but I'm pretty excited about that too. Um, I'll just say like, part of the reason why I'm doing all this watercolor stuff is a way for me to work on this project and sort of do it while not staring at a screen, because I need to limit my screen time a little bit. It's frying my brain. Like, I've been realizing this the last year or so. Like, my brain just feels so fried, which is part of the reason why I don't even do that much streaming. But like, this is really fun. I'm really glad y'all are hanging out. And y'all are like inspiring me to want to do it again in the future. Let's check back in on the comments real quick. For what it's worth, everything after. Oh, hold on. I want to go back to Jess real quick. I knew the analytics were bad, but I didn't know it was 0. Yeah, it was 0. I just had to guess. So back to Taco. For what it's worth, everything after Plot 2, the Will, and the Wombo combo solidified that I knew it would go into deeply personal and informative philosophical storytelling. It was fantastic. Well, I'm glad you liked it. I think it ending where it did was appropriate, especially in terms of resisting power creep that would trivialize what became the finale. I 100% agree. I really do feel like, yeah, like I don't feel like it could have ended better than that. I mean, maybe it could have ended. I don't know. That the way I ended it was like, it was bizarre for storytelling. I'm glad that I did it, but it was a huge like creative risk. Like that second to last episode, or the last 3 episodes. um I mean, it was almost end of Evangelion style, like like, what are we doing here? But I wanted to do that. Like, I guess this happens to every artist where they see something like, I want to do my version of that. And I've always in the back of my head been like, I want to do my version of End of Evangelion, where everything just goes nuts and like people are like, what's going on? Why is this happening? Like for me, there's just like, I think what it is like this desire to reflect a feeling that I had when I was younger and then put my own take on it and to give my own perspective on it or sort of reflect it in a way. Um, because Neon Genesis Evangelion was a huge influence on me as a kid and was also part of what got me started into like being curious about metaphysics and occultism and all that stuff. Um, which ended up, leading to me writing Trailer Park Warlock, which was basically like me kind of working through a lot of the like strange ideas in metaphysics and the occult and like finding the humor in it, because I think oftentimes it gets taken so seriously that people aren't able to put in proper discernment into like, okay, but these are ideas, right? And there are some reality to the ideas, and then there's aspects of those ideas that are just like, I mean, I don't know. People have experiences that I don't have. I have experiences that people never had that I've talked about. When I talk to people about Reiki, they're like, like, and I understand why. Like, I felt that way too, and I don't expect anybody to be on board with it. It's pretty weird. Um, it's a super weird thing, and for me, like, it's helped me a lot, but it might not help everybody. You know what I mean? Like, um, see you later, Jess. Thanks for hanging out. Taco. I think TPW stuck the landing with the ending, especially Pontoon and the other lady observing and reflecting on what happened in a very zen observation. Yeah, I enjoyed bringing them back in. It felt like it closed the loop. Um, and I always wanted to do that. I always wanted to like bring them back just to sort of conclude everything because they had kind of started that intense opening of like the big metaphysical stuff. And I also just really like them as characters a lot. Like I just look, Pontu, I mean, I don't know. Trailer Park Warlock's so full of like so many characters I enjoyed writing, but Pontu was like up there. Like he took over the story. like like Jake took such a back seat in season 2 because I was just like, oh, I'm so obsessed with writing about this vengeful vampire dude. like God, it was a lot of fun to write. But yeah, I think Trailer Park Warlock is one of those stories where at this point now I'm kind of starting to feel like it's gonna follow me a little bit in life. And by that I mean like I thought I was gonna be done with it and it would like, people would just be done with it and like it'd be forgotten or whatever. And like people still talk about it, people remember it. I get messages from people that are like, "Oh, thank you for writing Trailer Park Warlock. I really enjoyed it," and all this other stuff. I'm like, okay, like, have a good one, Triumph. Thanks for hanging out. Um, it's kind of surprising to me, I guess. And so we'll see how like Legend of Redneck, how people feel about Legend of Redneck. Um, I think that Legend of Redneck right now for me is just like it's one of those stories where it started off with a completely different format in my mind because initially when I was writing it, I was really thinking of it as like the Sunday Funnies comic strip. And there was a while when I was writing at the beginning where I was like, oh no, this wants to go into a bigger story. I'm not going to let it go into a bigger story. I'm not going to let it go into a bigger story. And then and then, just, like, seeing that sweet, sweet Jelly Belly staring at me, I was just like, "I gotta eat it." I want there's just so much that we can do here with these characters. And I think part of the reason why I wanted to keep it more towards a Sunday funny type story was I wanted to do a little bit more with Lank's family. And there's still room to do that in the future, but right now, where the story is, um, it doesn't make sense. Like, we're gonna have a couple little interludes here and there where we go and just check in on them or whatever. And I have some ideas of how to include them later on in the story, but I think for right now everything's gonna be very focused on Judy, Loretta, Hizzard, and Lank, and everything going on in Ganderdalf's castle because ultimately this is a story that I want to begin and end, and maybe I'll do like an offshoot story afterwards, and I'm thinking about that, but that's like way ahead in the future, and I'm kind of taking it by 50 episode chunks. So like these first 50 episodes was the first act, then there will be another 50 episodes, it'll be the second act, and after that second act I will assess whether or not there's going to be two more acts or one more act. I'm shooting for one more act. Um, I want to try and wrap it up in about 150 episodes. I might feel, like I said, I might feel differently about that by the end of the second act. I may have, uh, referring to Taka's comment, I may have, wrote myself into an even bigger story. I don't know yet. I'm gonna keep it kind of limited and keep it within a framework that I can finish it probably within the next year and a half. And then I already have another story idea that I want to go from there, which Jess left the chat already, but to answer her question, I am working on ultimately having the story after Legend of Redneck be like a watercolor comic. Like I want to do it analog. I want to do it on paper. Um, I don't know how that's gonna work out yet. That's all like, I mean, once again, that's all in the future, but that's the plan currently. So anyway, I think that I think that should wrap it up. We've almost done an hour here hanging out, and I really appreciate y'all hanging out tonight. Um, yeah, Taco. Legend of Redneck is satisfying for me to write, and I think that and part of the reason why I want to end it within the time frame I want to end it is because I think that would make it easier for me to feel satisfied with it, if that makes sense. I think the tighter a story is, the more likelihood it is to like meet my expectations. But anyway, so like I was saying, I really enjoyed hanging out with y'all tonight, and I'm gonna try and do this again in the future. I want to do this a little bit more. Maybe even hang out and like work. Maybe y'all can watch me work or whatever. But for now, I'm gonna chill out. I'm gonna do a little bit more painting. Um, do a little bit of landscape painting, and just enjoy the quiet nature that's around me after I turn off these porch lights. Like it's a really nice night tonight. So anyway, I hope y'all have a nice night yourselves, and we will talk again soon. All right, later. Bye.